Hey everyone, David here, and I've got some exciting news to share. I've decided to write a book, and I've entitled it Psychosocial Hazards Are Real. The book is intended to help clarify the fact that psychological safety cannot be achieved without paying attention to the psychosocial hazards people are being exposed to. Despite how much individuals might be interested in treating others with kindness, dignity, and respect, many cultures are so full of psychosocial traps that no psychological health and safety effort can ultimately succeed. But to address psychosocial hazards, you first have to know what they are, and you have to have some idea what to do to address them. Though the book won't be 100% complete until the spring of 2025, I'd like to share a unique opportunity to reserve a copy during the book presale campaign. The campaign will run from September 16th to October 18th, 2024. This will be an opportunity to get one of the first copies of the book, tickets to the book launch event, and other opportunities to learn more about psychosocial hazards. For more information, you can go to my personal LinkedIn or Facebook page, or the LinkedIn, Facebook, or webpage for ID2 Solutions. Don't miss out on this unique opportunity. Now, back to this episode of the podcast. Work should be a place where not only work gets done, but where people feel supported and safe. For some, this is not the reality. We'll talk with a human capital, risk, and safety professional squarely focused on what needs to be done to unbreak the souls of those that have been psychologically harmed at work. Up next on this episode of the Psych, Health, and Safety USA podcast. From Flourish DX, this is the Psych, Health, and Safety USA podcast. As workplace mental health has become a global priority, there's a greater focus on addressing psychosocial hazards. Each week, we look at psychological safety from an occupational health and safety perspective. Let's talk psychological health and safety. Welcome to this week's Psych, Health, and Safety USA podcast. I'm your host, Dr. I. David Daniels, and I want to thank you for tuning in. Each week, we seek to increase awareness of the importance of psychological health and safety by learning from the lived experiences, research, and expertise of our guests, as well as advocating strategies to reduce harm and minimize vulnerability to psychosocial hazards in the American workplace. So some of the signs of a toxic workplace include poor communication, lack of transparency, frequent misunderstandings, and unclear instructions. It also involves cliques and exclusion, including employees forming exclusive groups, leading to feelings of isolation. Toxicity is driven in many ways by poor leadership, including managers who are unapproachable, inconsistent, and display favoritism. Some of the steps to heal workplace toxicity include identifying problems by conducting anonymous surveys and holding open discussions to understand the issues causing toxicity, looking for patterns in feedback and identifying common concerns, addressing issues including ensuring that leaders and managers receive effective leadership communication and conflict resolution training. Leaders need to be held accountable for their behavior and its impact on the workplace culture. Fostering open communication by creating channels for workers to voice concerns without fear of retaliation. This means encouraging transparency and regular, honest communication between all levels of the organization. So all of this sounds good, but how do we actually do it? That's the conversation today. I have the pleasure of speaking with someone who's on the field of battle, helping people not only address these environments, but how to repair some of the damage that these environments have created. And I'll say this before we get into it. I sometimes come across to people as bashing organizations, and it's not the organization. It is the culture that has often been left to languish for years. And not everybody intends to hurt other people, but you are. So we're going to talk about some of the ways to what some of that healing looks like. And We're going to jump right in with an introduction of my guest by my guest with this question. Who is Keidra Norwood?
Well, David, thank you so much. That is such a great question that I've been thinking about. And that question had been evolving over time, right? So if we pinpoint who Keidra is today, well, Keidra is the person that has come to the realization that she's an empath. She is someone who is very uh, attuned, right, to her identity, who she is as a wife, as a mom, as a new grandmother of a beautiful, almost 2-year-old Jaden, whom I have affectionately given the nickname Bodie Cash. And he's my world. And I am a doting grandmother on him. Equally, I'm someone who's very passionate about mental health care and raising awareness of mental health care in Black and Brown communities. And not only mental health care, but the overarching focus of health and wellness in our community, specifically around heart health, right? And not only knowing who I am in those spaces form who I am and impact the work that I do, I'm very focused on my principles of, being in a space, occupying spaces where you are honoring choice. Choice has to be honored for me, right? Choice, uh, autonomy and agency, as well as really being focused on safety, right? Absent those things, that's like a no-go for me, right? And that's why it was so purposeful for me to take that pivot, that career pivot from corporate into human capital risk, right? Risk and safety, right? And when I think of safety and the way I'm terming safety is looking at safety from a psychological standpoint, right? So it's less about, as you say, the steel toe boots and the hard hats, right? It's more about being able to be whole in the spaces that you occupy. So that's who I am today. I'm sure as this empath evolves, my identity will evolve, and I'm always betting it will evolve for the better.
Absolutely. Wow. Wow. So much to chat about. So much. So much. One other, this is actually the one standard question that every single solitary person I've had on this podcast for getting close to 3 years. I always ask the same one. What does psychological health and safety mean to you?
Yeah. And I kind of almost answered it a little bit, but I'll go back and reframe more. It's about being whole in the spaces you occupy, right? There is no threat or perception of a threat of you being vocal or not being vocal about a situation or having a position. The only position that should be really important to you is the space that you're occupying, being present where your hands are. Anything outside of that or anything that disrupts that mindset, to me, it's a psychological risk. It's a psychological safety risk, right? So if I'm in a space, that space has to be conducive of me being present.
Hmm. Hmm.
That's
Hmm.
that's how that's my interpretation of it.
I I I like it. I like it. I get it. It makes so much sense. The connection you're making between health and safety and presence. More than, and often that conversation comes up around physical presence. So we go into a space and it's too hot or too cold, or the floors are too slippery, or there are nails on the floor, or there's the places we can cut ourselves. And so as a society, we've done a better job of creating physically safer spaces. That's better than it used to be. As a matter of fact, the year before the OSH Act was passed, 14,000 people got killed at work. And now we're kind of patting ourselves on the back. It's only 5,000 now. It's under 5 days. But we don't do a lot of tracking of how many people are physically present and emotionally so damaged that they can barely survive. Their emotions are just horrifically traumatized. It's horrible. But again, their body shows up. There's some studies that were done that suggest, I think it's Dr. William Kahn from Boston University talks about these 3 kind of tiers of engagement, that people can be physically present, cognitively present, or emotionally present. And there are a lot of people, physically they're there, and that's where it stops. Because emotionally it is so hazardous that people can't bring their full self. They can't speak up. They just can't be themselves. So they have to do that code switching thing.
That code switching has been brought to the forefront here recently. And I'm glad you're touching on it, because the takeaway for me is to ask ourselves collectively, why would somebody need to code switch?
Say more.
That's where I am, because we talked about earlier about really looking at things from a root cause perspective. Let's dial it back a little bit. What is it about my presence and being present in your space that prompts me to want to deny my dialect and show up in a way that is the majority, or the way that is uncommon for me in my person, but viewed as acceptable in that space? So that's the challenge.
Right. Yeah. Oh boy. I honestly believe that a lot of that of that experience comes from a lack of inclusion on the front end of the conversation. So, and I repeat this a lot, and I'll repeat it again. Everything I do for me is perfect for me. It's not perfect for everybody else, though. Just not. And it doesn't make what I'm doing right or wrong or good or bad. It just really works well for me. And people start businesses. Some of those businesses become employers. Some of those businesses recruit, hire, select, appoint people, and give no thought whatsoever to what is perfect or what is better for the other person. This is the way I do it, and I write the rules, and I tell people this is the way it's got to be done. And in many cases, I don't even care how it affects Keidra, because it works for me. And I think that's what's going on in a lot of these environments, that it worked great for us. I was in the fire rescue service for a bunch of years. Works great for the guys because guys created it. But then when women show up, it's like it's not as comfortable. So why not? Because it wasn't designed to be. And then we kind of, either overtly or covertly kind of force people to be something that they're not. And then when they don't do their best work, we get rid of them and look for another person.
Right. Or you realize that this person is not contributing at the level that they were before, and you can't quite put your finger on what happened.
So talk to me a little bit about this approach that you take around human capital risk and safety. That is not something that I hear people talking about a lot. As a matter of fact, they tend to separate them. The human capital's over there, safety's over there, and risk may or may not even come into. So how do you come to integrate these these ideas?
Yeah, I have learned to look at risk um in its totality, where the common theme or word or phrase in risk, if it's not automated, there is a risk. There's a risk of failure, right? If a human is involved, there is a risk, right? I've had 20 plus years of uh compliance, operational risk, third party risk, anything you name it, in varying industries, from telecom, from financial services, multiple spaces there, and even in the mortgage industry, right? Um, there has always been this underlying, listen, if a person can touch it, they can break it, there's a potential for risk, right? So for me, when I think of risk, I think of human the human capital is the greatest risk to an organization and is truly the new forefront of a third party risk for an organization. Because if you think about from a standpoint of three different parties, you have the employee, you have the company and or organization, then you have the shareholders. Who's the third party in that situation? And if we miss the opportunity to really look at human capital, not through the lens of them being a monolith or uh, just a commodity, but they are human beings. And you have to take into an account for feelings and emotions, the totality of a human. I don't advocate that for leaders, right? That you have to be so vulnerable that it makes you uncomfortable. Because in that point, then one can argue, well, Keidra, you're being hypocritical here. No, I'm arguing that one element of a leadership needs to incorporate empathy and the ability to empathize and be able to control your vulnerability in that space. I really feel like leadership training is lacking uh real time empathy focus, because I feel like empathy is the great um normalizer, or the great neutralizer, right? You have different characteristics, different tranches, but at the end of the day, everyone's human. And in order to get the most out of the human experience, whether you are doing that experience in a one-on-one or in a group setting, for you all to accomplish a common goal, I am of the opinion that you have to be able to visualize yourself in that person's shoes so you know how to best motivate them for the desired outcome.
Mm,
I can talk a
mm.
lot, so
Right. Oh
break
no,
in.
I no that that is really illuminating, because and something that occurs to me as you started talking about risk. So again, my acquaintance with risk is from a purely kind of safety perspective. The other thing about risk is the product of exposure to a hazard that you're vulnerable to. Risk doesn't just live out in space somewhere. It is it there's a source. There's a source of harm someplace, and I have to be vulnerable to that source of harm. And I think that's a part of the challenge that people have when they talk about risk to other people, because it doesn't affect me. So I don't think it's a risk at all. No, you're just not vulnerable. The risk is there. And many of our systems, we've put a lot of time into creating systems to make sure that the organization is free of risk, that the system is free of risk. But then the humans who are in it's like, well, we're just functionaries. It's like, you see what I mean? But we are, to your point, we are all individual human beings. And so there's all kinds of differences, even though we may look different, talk different, or no, look the same and talk the same. we're still totally twins are still different people. They may look alike, but they're different people and different. They have different triggers and different experiences and different things that cause them to feel however it is that they feel. And if our systems are set up in this almost robotic way, again, someday I do believe there will be AI type robots doing some of the things that humans do today, particularly the ones that are more physically hazardous, and they should. So we can go on more vacations. I'm good with that, but we're not there yet. We're not there yet. And people are people are people. They're people. They're not a machine. We
Yeah.
can't assume that because it works for me, it works for them.
Yeah. And that's the thing when you talk about psychosocial hazard, to me, those are, that's right there together, right? So for an
That's right.
organization, if you're not really in tune with, that landscape for your employee, you're missing it. Now you can do all of these employee engagement studies and surveys and everything, but
Right.
if you don't have an environment where space is brokered, right, you're not gonna get reliable, truthful responses. You will get manufactured responses because employees think, you know, it ain't even safe for me to tell the truth. So I'm just gonna check the box. I'm gonna go along to get along and, keep it moving. But in the meantime, you have organizations whose attrition is out the roof, right? And you have situations where leaders are burning out, right? Um, there's all kind of stigmas around, especially when we talk about mental health in an organization. I mean, I've been in corporate long enough or have been in corporate long enough to know that there at one point there were sayings, there are no tears in corporate. There are no emotions in corporate. You come in, you do your yes. So you had to stifle and bottle up everything and get the work done.
So, if to the extent you want to share, was there a particular situation with you or with somebody else that said that that wasn't the place that you wanted to stay in terms of the whole corporate environment?
Yeah. Uh, that definitely was the case. That was the situation for me. I think we touched on a scenario where people just show up, and I felt this awakening of self, this further realization that purposefulness was important to me and more important than showing up in this box that described or defined what success was supposed to be, right? Highly educated, well paid, great, employer from a standpoint of, yeah, you work there? Oh, girl, that's great. But it was not feeding my purpose, right? And I called it the ikigai, right? So are you
Mm.
familiar with ikigai?
I'm not familiar, but it sounds just the
Or I would hope that my, Southern drawl and said does not do it this justice, but that's the way I think it's pronounced. But it is this, Japanese, methodology or learning where it talks about if you align your life and look at your interests, what you're happy with doing, and your work, and overlay it like a Venn chart, the thing that overlap, that sweet spot, that's your ikigai,
Oh,
right?
okay.
And for
Okay.
me, coming into realization for that just helped align a lot of things that were pulling at me. Like I knew I was called to do something different because the fact that I cannot suppress this empath in me, right? So that's kind of where that uh stemmed out of, and really just embracing it versus fighting who I really was to fit a box,
To fit a
to
box.
fit a
To fit a
box.
box.
or to
Fit a
chase a
box.
bag, right?
Yes,
That your
yes.
box, your bag don't work for me no more.
Do you need more psych health and safety in your life? Then head over to the Flourish DX Academy for several free on-demand e-learning courses. If you're an internal professional, follow Flourish DX on Eventbrite to register for any of our free fortnightly interactive webinars. Our flagship professional practice program is also exclusively available for internal professionals. The 12-week course blends theory, applied practice, and interaction with other professionals through live lectures and a monthly community of practice session. Find out more about all these learning opportunities or inquire about a bespoke in-house training at the Flourish DX Academy. www.45003.org. Now back to this episode.
Right. Yeah, and the sad thing about it is, again, somebody created that box, somebody filled that bag, but they didn't consider how somebody who wasn't involved in that process would feel. And they're not, and I just wish some of these organizations, even the ones who say that they're doing great, would be more open to different ways of doing things when you bring in different people. Or that they'd be more honest. And this is, okay, I'm going to say it anyway. This is when people talk about, the country and where it's going, all that type of thing. I don't have as much kind of anxiety around it because it simply is what it is. Many of these systems were designed to be, they're doing exactly what they were designed to do. And so we can't expect a system that was set up to exploit people, called a corporation, and some of them were set up specifically to do nothing but make money. They weren't set up to do good by the environment or by human beings or the animal. They were set up for one purpose and one purpose only, which is to make as much money as possible and to do whatever it takes to get that done. Okay, so why do we expect it to be a great corporate citizen? It's not a corporate citizen. It's an exploitation system. So if we want things that are not exploitive, let's design things that aren't. Let's create spaces that are open. Don't create a system for and by one group and then invite me in and say, well, we're open to having you here as long as you're like us. Well, you're not open to me then. You're open to something else. You're not open to me, because I too came to that realization 5 or so years ago. It probably had been with me for longer, but I said, like, nah, I'm out. I'm not going to do it. Thankfully, I'd spent enough time in advance of that, probably about 6 or 7 years, getting myself in a position where I could do that. So like, nah, I'm not, yeah. And that doesn't mean, I'm not independently wealthy or that type of thing, but I'm just not going to do it. I'm not going to be somebody I'm not. And if you don't like it, that's okay. I'm not angry with you.
Right.
I don't have an issue with you. I'm just not going to stay in that space with you
Yeah.
because it doesn't work for me.
Yeah. Totally preaching to the choir here. Totally. I have a wealth of gratitude to my husband, who, is my co-partner in this space, where it just got to the point where, no, I can't do this anymore. I can't do this anymore.
Right. Yeah. The extra few hundred square feet in the house, or the new car, the ring, or the trip, or the whatever, it's not worth that. It's not worth the price that has to be paid to go into these spaces. And they'd be so literally, I've talked to people on this podcast who, I had a guest on early on who showed me a picture of themselves separated by a few years, and one looked like their grandmother, and that was the younger them. It was the younger, because of the stress that they were exposed. And this person told me that they didn't reckon until they came out of it. They went like, whoa, that was me. Yeah. They look younger, feel healthier and all after you get out of it, because when you're in it, it is so, it's like, fish don't know they're wet.
Exactly. And I can so relate to that, because I look back at pictures where I'm on vacation and I have my work laptop like this, waiting to board a flight, or not even that. one industry that I worked in was so overwhelming and so toxic, it changed the way we vacationed. This was the reason why we started going on cruises. So I could be totally detached emotionally and mentally from work. It was just that invasive. So that resonates with me on so many levels. And so that really is another reason why having the self-discovery, looking back, and also coming into contact with Dr. Carrie Yazid's information and her studies and reading Unbreak My Soul and hearing that connection between women, right? And toxic workspaces and the why behind what makes us more predisposed to feeling this and really understanding that it ain't just me.
Right.
It ain't just me.
So that was the next place I was going to go, because this idea about, so you are a certified Unbreak My Soul facilitator.
Yeah.
I didn't know there was such a
I'm
thing.
I'm the
Tell
the inaugural cohort. I'm one of the
Come
inaugural
on.
people.
Tell me more about what unbreak. Again, the concept of unbreaking someone, that kind of makes sense to me, but talk to me about what the concept looks like and how you got really interested in it.
Yeah, I was reading over, just kind of going through and I had been following her since COVID happened or something. And it was around I first started or came in contact with Dr. Yazid around the podcast or newsletter that she had. It was called the Retired Hot Girl, right? And I just thought it was hilarious. I listened to her podcast and I was just like, oh yeah, yeah, this is I can relate to her. And again, she too also had this southern drawl because both of us are from Louisiana. So fast forward as I'm, in the same space with every other human, in this COVID, pandemic and post pandemic. And as I'm, you know, looking and following stuff on LinkedIn, I saw that she has said that, hey, I'm thinking about doing this certification around the book because I've read the book over the holiday. Well, not holiday, but over, COVID. And I think it was over COVID, but I read the book before she put the disclaimer out. And it started dawning on me because not only um, of her putting the call out to other women and that she wanted to ensure that the concepts around understanding work trauma and some of the common challenges that professional Black women, were facing and helping and to position them to have helpful responses to that trauma and building that communities that concept lived on beyond her, beyond her being the number one person scripting and writing it out. And, so the thought was to create a network of women who could touch other women. So it was the concept of community before community became a buzzword. Right. And that's the premise of it, is to create that psychologically safe space where women, not just C-suite, not just managers, people leaders, whatever, you could work at McDonald's and have someone come in and just berate you, and not be able to react in the moment for fear of further violence or provocation. But you need a safe space where you can talk through and release that from your body, right? And in that space, we typically like to, number one, provide a safe and really private space for people. Although it's a group of people or women, typically no more than 10 women, because you want to really maintain that level of intimacy for people to feel safe to speak out. We ask that, that people keep information confidential in the group, and folks are also encouraged. You don't even have to put your real name out there. You don't have to come on camera. This is space. You occupy this space the way it feels safest for you. See, with safe spaces, I cannot describe what is absolutely safe for you. It is an
That's right.
individual feeling. It is an individual requirement. I can't. All I can do is tell you, I will make a space for you, and you can move around how it best fits your situation. So that's it. That's, facilitating in that space, and then offering resources around, um, workplace violence, and offer information from ELC, like different resources to point them in the right direction. I'm not a practicing attorney. I have a legal background. This is not legal advice. This is not employment advice. This is safe space. And if I have access to a resource that could help you as another woman, that's what I'm here for. Right. And, you know, I've had people also somewhat be critical of the fact that the safe spaces are at cost. Right. And to that, I say, you know what? You want to really maintain the integrity of the space. And if you are leaving it open where there's um, no filter and, buy-in to get in, that would take away from others, right? Who really need that space. So that's why it's very competitive, and there's a low barrier, right? There's a low barrier to entry. And then even that, this has really caused me to shift to create a separate offering where it's one-on-one mentorship with people, right? So even if you feel like I'm too weak to be in front of a group, you just reach out. And that kind of, the premise of the Unbreak My Soul, the certified, practitioner, or so to speak. But it's being very intentional about providing space for you to release.
Right. Right. Something that you said that really, I absolutely love it. When you say that, you don't know what helps me, what causes me to feel safe, and this is something I talk about in my book. Psychosocial hazards are real. That there's a difference between the safety things that we do and the feeling of safe that people get or don't. Because there are a lot of places they've got zero injuries. They've got, their OSHA log is absolutely clean, but people still don't feel safe. There are places that have virtually zero crime, but I don't feel safe. There are places I can't see anything, but I feel something that makes it feel uncomfortable. And we act 80% of the time out of how we feel, not by some study, or we don't act logically, we act emotionally. And so why would we've as a society, again, as human beings, we've tried to separate how people feel about things from the things that they do, and say they're two separate, and it doesn't matter how they feel. How they feel is driving how they act.
Exactly.
If you don't like how I act, you're gonna have to change the way I feel about
Yeah.
it.
So
And you're forcing me, or trying to force me, may not necessarily cause me to feel any different. Matter of fact, it may cause me to feel worse.
yeah, it's I'm gonna have some type of response to
That's
that
right.
trauma. Either it's gonna be fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. What am I gonna do? Because you're trying to force me, or you're putting me in a container that is triggering to me. I, I, I gotta choose me. you know?
That's right.
And
Yes. If you want to be
if you
healthy,
want
if
to
you
be
want to be healthy,
healthy,
if you want to be healthy,
if you
yes,
want to be
yes.
healthy, and if you are empowered enough to want to be healthy, I'm going to choose me eventually, right? So that time and that toxicity, it could be 1 year, 10 years. It just depends on how long it takes for you to choose you. So, you know, and I shared earlier, I have 20 plus years in corporate, and some of those experiences about the tearing and all of that, that happened early in my corporate career, you know, in a male dominated space where, I was referred to as the girls. The girls can't. Okay.
Oh Lord, oh dear. Yeah, yeah. Wow,
Yeah.
wow,
It's things are,
wow.
you know, things are unique for women of color, right? And we talk about that. And I just think through, like we're talking about safe space and containers and how not choosing you and the prolonged impact of it, right? It's either gonna be mental, emotional, uh, physical, right? Either or, but maybe a combination of both, right? Because we look at how some of the disparities are in health outcomes for women of color. So here's something I don't know if you knew. I had a stroke at age 29. Yes. Uh,
Really?
Gratefully and thankfully, to whom I believe in, I'm grateful to God that He restored me, right? And let me tell you about toxic environments. Workplaces, a corporate had, ingrained the stigma of, because I'm a Black woman, I have to show up in a box every day. So with that, I had totally suppressed or put it in the back of my mind that I had had a stroke at 29. I never talked about it, never anything, never let it detract any projection I had in my corporate, career path. And it wasn't until a day here recently, and I say recently, over the last couple of years, that uh, I was volunteering for an American Heart Association event. And I was like, okay, yeah, I'll go ahead and volunteer to be a team captain. And throughout the training for it, they kind of coached us on, hey, here's how you have to be a captain. And when you have survivors, you give one person one colored hat, and then the volunteers get a different color. And when she said survivors of heart attack and stroke, it was like I had a moment where I felt the presence of God say, it's okay to share. And in that moment, it was very emotional for me because I was like, I had a stroke, and it took a minute for the um the unlearning of being afraid to bring my whole self to work, would be acceptable internally for me enough to advocate for other women of color to say, please don't sacrifice your health for the sake of this. And subsequently, that journey led me to be nominated as a Go Red for Women for American Heart Association, a woman of impact for Tarrant County. And I subsequently won. I raised enough money. I was woman of impact for 2024. Technically, I still am because they haven't named the new person yet. But, I look at stuff being purposeful. It wasn't for naught. And that's what made it okay, and all of the things just started rushing in. You've given enough. Now I need you to really give back to the people who need it, not the shareholders, not the organizations, but the people who I called you to serve, and that's women. Yeah.
Right.
I
Right.
told you I'm a woman of faith. It's gonna come out.
Uh,
Yeah.
That that's quite okay. I am the product of a woman of faith. I am. I mean, yeah, I'm a mama's boy, big time. So, uh, but as we start to wrap, tell me a little bit about you recently launched Egan Rose
I
Consulting,
would. I would.
and so and again, it sounds like you've had this exhaustive background at the big places, at the up in the high
Mhm.
chairs, and you've decided to go at this in a slightly different way. So tell me a little bit about your consulting practice. What do you do? How do people find
Yeah.
you? But tell me a little bit about what your
My
focus is.
focus is I'm coming for you, sis. I'm here for you. Whether that be through doing consulting and contracting with the big boxes, right? That says, I want to come in and offer leadership training and strategies around managing empathy. It's that missing thread. It's the missing thread in helping give leadership the language, right? You could still keep your stone faith, it's okay.
It's
But
okay.
we just need to have a meeting of the minds, right? And to accomplish that, to mitigate that new third party risk, right? That's the consulting part. Then equally, I'm coming for it as a government contractor, right? I want to be able to touch spaces that touch us. And in the government contracting space, same approach, but I really want to hone in on heart health and mental health, right? I want to be able to offer strategies that says, hey, what's the number one death predictor for African American population when it comes to healthcare? Heart health. And you want to talk about predictors, AFib, right? How do we break the stigma around AFib and be able to have those trusted organizations where you feel okay to say this something's wrong? It's okay to trust to the point of bringing the healthcare to the communities or enabling me to manage and self-manage and know when to choose me. Girl, you need to choose you and
Right.
go to the emergency room because you about to
Right.
fall out. And I don't
Right.
say that in the space of that kind of ain't what I said when I was on my way to the emergency room. Because trust me, I was taking care of other people and putting me last. And when I got to the ER, I passed out. Right. So I'm coming for you, sis. That's what I'm doing, and it's gonna be more to come. I'm really kinda like a 90 days full-time, maybe 90, 100 days full-time in my consultancy, but I'm so grateful at the connections and the accomplishments that I've made thus far. Now if I can beat this social media, element, and it is a
it'll
lot.
it'll be
It'll
all
be
right.
alright.
Yeah.
Tools and resources.
Yeah.
Tools and resources, but I'm
Yeah.
here for my sisters, right? And I'm here
Right.
for anyone who wants to help me to advocate for them. I'm not male bashing because I love my men. I have a husband and a son and brothers and a grandson, right? So I want to make heart health, mental health, number one priority because where the mind and heart go, and I'm tired of us giving up body count. I'm tired of it. That's where I am. That's who I am. And they can find me on all the socials at Egan Rose Consulting. And especially I'm more on LinkedIn than anything. Find me Egan Rose Consulting or just look for Keidra Norwood.
Right.
Okay.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. It is it's kind of sad that sometimes people believe that advocating for one group is somehow has to be at a bash to the other
It
group,
is
and it isn't.
not.
I consider myself to be a 100% ally of my
Mhm.
sisters, but I'm not one.
Yeah.
And I can't, I there's some things about being a woman that I'll never understand. I've been in a committed relationship with this same woman for 37 years, and there's some things about her that I'm still figuring out. She's still figuring out about me. And some things I probably never will understand because they're different. And all of that being said it is easier to advocate for something that you understand and represent yourself. It's easier to understand and that's okay. That doesn't exclude other people, because the principles that you're talking about, the principles, they're not unique. It's just that a lot of times women haven't heard about them. Women experience heart disease different
Yeah.
than men do.
The symptoms are
Black people have, there are some environmental and emotional things that we deal with that white people don't. It doesn't make either of them good or bad or right or wrong, but they are very different. And this is something I heard and I continue to repeat. Different does not mean deficient. It simply means different. That's all. It just means different. And we need people to advocate in spaces that I'm a little bit different than that space. So we need another space that's for someone like
yeah.
me
Yeah.
that's had my experience.
Yeah. It's D squared. Different is not deficient.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and expertise in this area, and for sharing a bit of your story. And hopefully there are folks out there who are watching or listening who maybe their souls have been broken, and they're looking for a healing in that area, and just could be the person to help them along that journey. So again,
Yeah,
thanks
no
very
worries.
much.
And
Thanks
thank
very
you
much.
so much for the opportunity and the curiosity.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So if you're watching or listening to this podcast for the first time, welcome. I hope something you've heard will bring you back to a future episode. Previous episodes can be found at psychhealthandsafetyusa.com. You can watch, like, subscribe, or share the podcast on the Flourish DX YouTube page. And please do reach out and join us in the Psych Health and Safety USA movement by connecting and becoming a subscriber on LinkedIn. So until next time, stay tuned and look out for the next episode of the Psych Health and Safety USA podcast. Tune in each week for new episodes of the Psych Health and Safety USA podcast. If you have a story or know of one that needs to be told, reach out to us on LinkedIn or send an email to david@id2-solutions.com, or go to the Flourish DX website at flourishdx.com. We'll see you next time.